Welcome to the Catherine Vandome and Me podcast.
Hashtag hosts and the HQFM Quiz and Bingo software are proud to sponsor the Catherine Vandome and Me podcast. With HQFM Quiz and Bingo software, you can use this interactive quiz software at any venue. All you need is an internet connection. Go to hashtagquiz.co.uk for your free trial today.
Hello and welcome to Catherine Vandome and Me. And today I'm joined by a very talented guest who is a producer and director. He's worked for the BBC. He's also worked on Have I Got News for You? And he is best known for Big Field, which was for BBC Three. He's also the talented, super talented comical guy who did the memes during lockdown for the party political broadcast with Boris and co. And he was then picked up by Piers Morgan for his comedy interludes and additions to those broadcasts. So it gives me great pleasure, a wonderful childhood friend. Please welcome the very, very talented and very comical Mr. Darren Dutton. Hello, Darren. How are you?
Hi, Cathy. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction as well.
You're very welcome. It's great to see you after all these years, because it's been, how long is it since we first trained together at A-levels?
God, it must be 30 odd years ago now, surely. Yeah.
Well, you haven't changed a bit, Darren.
Oh, thank you very much.
So it's a pleasure to have you on today, particularly because we have that connection in childhood. I always admired your work. You started back at age 16, perhaps even earlier, starting with these comedy memes involving all of us in your comedy production work, which I knew then you had a career in the arts ahead, because you were so brilliant. And I think I once told you should be a stand-up comedian as well. So a second string to your bow. So tell us a little bit, Darren, before we go back to your childhood and hear more about you. Just tell us a little bit about the type of work you've been doing recently, and then we'll take you back in time. So go on.
Okay, so most recently I've been kind of doing a lot of social media stuff, really, because that's kind of where things are at right now, isn't it, kids? So I kind of last few years I've been doing mashups and stuff like that, and then really sort of by accident fall into it professionally. So I've kind of had offers to do social media management for various TV shows and support TV shows making sometimes funny content, sometimes just kind of clipping up TV shows and things. So yeah, that's kind of where it's been headed the last few years. So kind of it's been interesting kind of how that's developed, really.
Yeah.
Sort of by accident, completely by accident, really.
Well, you say by accident, but your talents were there at age 16. So we're edging up. I'm 50 this year. I'm sure you're a lot younger, or maybe the same.
Yeah,
So
I hit it last year, so
an overnight success, Darren, from the age of 16 and all that
Yeah.
training. So you've done a fantastic job. And honestly, we've reconnected recently. You've also, I want to credit you, you've also done the opening titles for my podcast, and you've been an enormous support there as well. You are an incredibly funny man and always had me crying. It's, to make me cry with laughter. You really did. Your production quality, considering we only had VHS and Betamax back then, was just absolutely unmatchable. So it's great to have you on. And what I want to ask you is, going back to your childhood, Darren, is this something that you always had in your heart and soul, or did you want to be an actor? Just take us back. Where were you born, first of all?
So I was born in Warrington. But then I moved to Blackpool. I mean, I don't really remember Warrington. I moved to Blackpool. My folks moved when I was about 18 months old. So my main memory is just growing up in Blackpool, which is actually, looking back on it, it's a really great place to have grown up.
Yes.
Looking back on it, I think it's like anyone. Everyone kind of has a funny relationship with their own hometown,
Yes.
and I think looking back on it now, it was a good time. I probably hated it at the time, but that's kind of like everybody, I guess. Um,
Because
but
it's the
yeah,
entertainment hotspot, Darren.
exactly. Well, that was the thing. That was when my folks moved. I think that's what my dad in particular. My dad was really sort of kind of a starstruck person. He really was.
Was
He
he?
was yeah. He really loved the business basically, and he was an amazing guy. My dad. He used to. So when we moved to Blackpool, we had a guest house. We had a holiday flats. So that's where I grew up. Um, Kind of having other people living in flats above me was just quite a weird scenario when you're sort of 6, 7 years old. Um, but my dad, he was a when he was in Warrington, he was a tanker driver, HGV driver. Got to Blackpool and he was a bin man. But what he also did was in the evenings he got a job at North Pier in Blackpool, working backstage. So he used to be what's called head flyman, which was basically the guy who used to pull up all the curtains and put all the backdrops in and stuff. Um,
Brilliant.
yeah, I always just think it's a kind of fairly remarkable life, like during the day being a bin man and then going to work at night and working with the grandkids. uh,
Incredible. I've never heard of a juxtaposition career like that. So he
yeah,
had his proper job by day, which
yeah,
many of us need as well in the
yeah,
arts,
yeah.
and then he had his entertainment in the
During
evening.
just during the summer seasons. So
Wow.
obviously, he'd run from kind of like from April to November, wasn't it? Something like
Yeah.
that.
And did
So
he support any particular professionals that he remembers back then?
I mean, my first memory of because he used to take me backstage all the time, so I grew up kind of being in that environment. So I remember the very first show I remember seeing was the Grumbleweeds, if anybody remembers the Grumbleweeds.
Yes, we used to love those. Yeah.
And my dad used to do all sorts of things with props. Um, they had I don't know if they did it on a regular thing, but they had like a net above the audience, and they would drop these like plastic spiders down on them and stuff. And my
Yes.
dad was like the guy who used to kind of do all that stuff. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, he worked there for probably 7 or 8 years, I think. And there was, it's all the Blackpool kind of scenario: Cannonball, Joe Longthorne, uh,
Yes.
Roy Walker, the Crankies, Russ Abbott, Les and Dustin, all that, all those people. So yeah, my dad used to take me backstage probably 2 or 3 times a year, and I'd go and meet all the stars and get to talk to them and go in the dressing rooms and stuff. So I kind of got a bit of a bug, you know, because
Yeah.
my dad loved all that side of it. He absolutely loved it, and he was very keen for me to go into showbiz. So when I was about 6, maybe 5 or 6, for one Christmas, I got like I don't know if you remember the Bon Tempi keyboards.
Yes. Yes.
They used to make horrendous noise when you switched them on. It was just like turning a fan heater on, and then you play. I got one of those for Christmas one year, and I sort of found I had this ability for picking out tunes. I could kind of like, and my dad was like immediately switched on, like, hey, this lad, he's good, this lad,
Yes.
he's gonna go far. So, so I started having organ lessons when I was about 8. Um, Funny, I used to go to this guy called John Dickinson. You wouldn't get away with it now. He was this guy, probably in his 60s, but he used to smoke like a chimney all the time. Just, yeah, and yeah, just
That
being an
sounds like a
8-year-old,
typical organist from
just being
that
like,
period. Yeah. Yeah.
just like being an 8-year-old kid, and having that, you just wouldn't have it now. But I did that for a few years, and then weirdly kind of got into classical music, which is, it's so looking back on it, it's mad now, really thinking like in Blackpool where you've just got this kind of culture of showbiz and stuff.
Yeah.
Hello, Tinker. Uh,
Sorry about that.
This culture of showbiz, and I just got into. I was a very atypical teenager. I just got into classical music. So I sort of begged my dad, like, I want to learn the piano. I don't want to learn the organ anymore. I really want to take it seriously. And so at that point, I started having piano lessons and did all my grades and everything. Um, and that's kind of, to be honest, that was where I was heading with my career. It was all going to be music.
Wow.
That was the whole thing. I mean, when we went to Preston together, we did theatre studies, but that was, for me, that was kind of like an interest, but it wasn't kind of like my main thing. My main thing with being at Preston was music A level, because that's kind of where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do.
So you just holding on to that, you basically did theatre studies A level at Preston
Yeah,
College. This was in
yeah,
Preston,
yeah,
and you also, as well as that, were doing A level music. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I was doing music and music tech as well. Music was very much what I was going to do. And it really changed when I got to Preston, actually, because I kind of realized that, sort of about the age of 13, 14, I got really into Monty Python. I like
Yes,
really into I mean,
they are superb.
really, I mean, just like overly. I was just the kid who used to quote, the sketches and all that kind of stuff. I'd go into school the next day, it'd be on a Saturday, and Monday morning I'd have a little group of friends and we'd be like, "Oh, did you watch Monty Python? Oh, it's funny position." So I got
So
really
they were
into
an early influence,
yeah,
Darren,
I
I'm
got I
hearing.
got I got really into comedy when I was about 13. It sort of hit me at the right time.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of join interest in music and comedy, and it was kind of, it was mainly music. And then when I got to Preston, maybe it was theatre studies, maybe it was a couple of other things. I just got into video making, and I thought, actually, no, I want to make funny videos. That's what I want to
Yes.
do.
And you're so
Um,
good. You're so good at it.
oh, well, thank you. But that's kind of where it all started.
So you
I mean,
started the videos at 16, Darren. You
yeah,
started the
yeah,
videos then. Yeah.
yeah. So what? I was really, as I say, I was really into music, and I used to be into music tech as well. So one thing I used to have was like, I used to have a little music studio, like a 4-track recorder. I got it when I was about 15, because I used to compose music as well. So I used to kind of play and, um, kind of make my own tunes and double up and add things to it and stuff. So I got really into this technical side of music, and then I wanted to kind of basically wanted to make my own kind of Monty Python show. So I remember, my dad having to go to radio rentals, to hire out a VHS camcorder for a weekend, because I mean, they were so expensive to buy then. So you'd
Yes.
hire them, and even for the weekend, it was like 50 quid or something.
Yes. We were quite lucky. I don't know why or how that happened. We had a home camera from, was it the 80s?
Yeah,
So, but ours was mainly Betamax as well, which was
right.
actually a slightly classier one, even
Yeah,
though there was less availability of it. And
yeah,
we were filmed every Christmas from about age 6.
yeah,
And like you said about the pipe, I don't know why, but back then my dad had a pipe and his pajamas Christmas morning. Not as good as you, but he would film us coming in for Christmas. So, like you said, they were very expensive, and most people were hiring them. But like you, we came from a video background. Did you have video footage at home as well?
yeah. Well, that's kind of, I remember like one year. It was probably the year I started at Preston, actually. I made like two 20-minute sketch shows with a mate. We wrote it together, and then we just took the camcorder out and just filmed it all over Blackpool.
And what was that
Um,
called?
oh God, I think the first one. Um, I've always been into sort of like nicking stuff and, uh, kind of kind of repurposing stuff. So I think the first one, I nabbed the titles for a film called The Story of Alexander Graham Bell.
Yes.
And I just used that as the title sequence to the sketch show. So the sketch show was just called The Story of Alexander Graham Bell, and then it had nothing to do with him at all. It was just sketches. Um,
And were you starring in them as well? Because
yeah,
from what I remember, you were also performing. And
yeah.
where was your heart then? Was your heart mainly in the media side or performing, or did you just love a hybrid of the music, the acting? Where was your heart?
I think it was the writing actually. The writing
Okay.
really, I really enjoyed the writing, and I really enjoyed the editing. The editing was the big thing. And of course, I mean, again, sounding like I'm completely ancient now, I'm 50, but like back in those days, editing, I mean, editing now is incredible. You just got a laptop and you can do it anywhere, and you know, you can change and chop it around. You can do all sorts. So much, you know, the young people of the day don't know what they've got. Um,
We're saying this, anyone that's
I know,
50.
I know, I know. It's pathetic, isn't it?
Words you never thought you'd say.
I know, I know. But literally, it was a case of having you had two VCRs and you had like one playing and one recording, and so you'd be kind of like editing was a case of like pressing pause, recording the bit you wanted, pressing pause again, finding the next bit. But I was always really into that side. I just was really fascinated because this video player that I had as well, you could also overdub sound on it as well. So you could add music and things. So I just got really into it. This is about 16, 17. But as I say, completely manually because that's all we had. Wasn't until much later on when I kind of eventually got into computers that I started to do it kind of that way. Um,
That's
but
incredible. And I think just to let the audience hear sort of the quality of what you're doing, we know because I've seen visually what you've done. Can you just explain what sort of things? Is it like running through the parks and that kind of thing? What sort of comedy would you bring? And also, I notice your classical music resonated within some of those as well, as it does with my opening titles here on this podcast. You obviously have a huge connection with that. And just tell us a little bit about what the content would be for anybody that's not aware of your work.
the content now
Yeah,
or content,
possibly back then first, and then we'll
but
come to
yeah.
the hilarious content that is consistently developing today.
So back then it was literally I just wanted to be Michael Palin. I just wanted to be John Cleese, you know, I just wanted to be Monty Python. So the sketch it was very much kind of a sketch show in the Monty Python vein, with complete with like links into other items, and you know, it really just apes that format. And also I think it's quite interesting because the Pythons were obviously Oxbridge, very clever. They had a There's a lot of cultural things that come in their work. So even though I was into classical music, they use classical music a lot as well. They have references to philosophers, and I think I picked up a lot of sort of education from Python actually, in terms of like cultural things and philosophy and politics as well even. Um, so that was that early on, and then I guess later. Um, Kind of a development of that. I mean, I was writing again, sort of probably longer form sketches and things. Um, and then much later, it kind of got into the mashup phase where I was taking other things and messing about with them. I've always liked doing that anyway. I've always liked kind of taking things and just re-editing them out of context. I remember one big influence was, have you seen the film Good Morning Vietnam with Robin
Yes.
Williams?
Oh, superb. Yeah.
Um, there was just a little bit on that
Was it when he
where
was ad-libbing on the radio?
when he was up living on the radio, but
Yeah.
there was one scene in that where he'd got an interview with Richard Nixon
Yeah.
and he'd chopped it up and he asked him different questions to what he was answering to.
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the questions was like, "Tell us about your balls." And then you had Richard Nixon going, "Well, they're quite small," uh, and it
Yes.
was. I just thought you can do that. You can do this. You can actually just
Yes.
take things out of context and like nick bits, and so that was like a bit of an eye opener. Kind of like, oh wow, you can actually play around with this stuff. So later on, yeah, that's kind of where I was at in terms of I would kind of kind of steal bits from TV and kind of mash them up. I mean, my first big one was So do you remember around about 2010, the X Factor was kind of huge at the time. It
Yes.
was like the
Yeah.
biggest show on TV, and they had a contestant on there called Wagner. I don't know if you
Yes, I
remember.
do. Yes.
He used to do he did like Love Shack with bongos and stuff like that, and everyone used to think he was terrible. Um, and then I remembered, and again, it's all linked into my knowledge of classical music. I remembered that obviously there's a composer called Richard Wagner,
Yes.
and I knew that Stephen Fry had done a documentary about him. So I thought, I wonder if you could mix in Stephen Fry talking about Wagner, but then cut in the guy from the
With
X
actual.
Factor. And it worked a treat. It was amazing. Just like you had Stephen Fry really being serious about the musical values, and then you cut to Wagner going Love Shack, baby, Love Shack. And that was my first like massive viral.
So
My
when was
first.
that, Darren? How old were you when that
Oh
went
God.
viral?
Oh God. 2010. So 30, 37, 36,
37.
37.
So you were putting these together, but just hitting them out on the internet, basically.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah. Well,
right?
I was kind of the last sort of 20 odd years, apart from the last sort of 7, I was a teacher.
Oh, hang on a sec. So let's go back. So you basically, this is brilliant. What a colourful career. And obviously we haven't seen each other for a few years. So
Yeah,
it's great to hear all about this. So you're back in childhood, you're doing the flies with your dad. Did you actually
yeah.
get to participate backstage a little bit with your father?
Not really. I just used to watch and kind of meet all the celebs and yeah, just kind of be a bit starstruck, like, oh wow, it's Russ Abbott.
Yes. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And
um,
so yeah, so you got to see what it was like from the audience's perspective. You also got to go backstage. You also got to meet the frontliners, the show folk, and then that gave you a feel for the pleasure of it all. So great that you were in Blackpool, because then at that particular period it really was quite a heightened experience. Blackpool was where everybody went. In fact, prior to that, my nana and grandpa had their honeymoon in Blackpool. That's how it used to be.
yeah,
That was the
yeah.
hot spot. And I hope today that we can get that back as well, because it is a fantastic place and somewhere I've thoroughly enjoyed performing over the years as well. There's some fantastic hotels and opportunities there for people in entertainment. So what resonates is that you sort of fell in love. Your dad was sort of your support mechanism, a bit like an agent, I suppose. And what
Yeah.
about your mum, Darren? Did she also enjoy the world of theatre as well?
No, not really. My mum and dad were kind of sort of polar opposites in a way. My dad was very outgoing, very jokey, jovial. My mum was a lot quieter, a lot more reserved. Um, I think they kind of needed each other, actually, looking back on it, to get that sort of balance. Um, but no, I mean, she was enthusiastic about what I did.
Yeah.
But I think I probably took more after my dad just because that was where his heart was. He loved Theatreland. He loved musicals. He was just
Wow.
really into it.
And have you got any siblings, Darren?
I've got 2 older brothers.
And are they anywhere in the arts as well, or?
No, not at all. I don't know why that. I mean, I think we're all very very different. We're all very different people. So I went in that direction, and then
Yeah.
I don't think maybe because my dad indulged me more than the others, I
As
think,
as
potentially.
the littlest?
As the youngest,
Yeah.
I was probably indulged a little bit more, like, this
But he
is.
probably saw a twinkle in your eye. I think, all three of us, when we were little, I say in my book how we had curtains, the way your dad would have done that, in the middle of the lounge. So one of my older brother would open the curtains and play music, like you, he was into music. I would come and sing a song, and my little brother would sort of toddle behind with lots of costumes and things. So we kind of had a little, if you like, theatre from a very young age in the house, which was a great way to babysit, because my mum would say, go away, produce a show and come back in an hour. So fantastic babysitting, with the least to do. But for you, you're saying that in your house it wasn't necessarily something that was there present, but your dad at a young age could see you could play. So you had the lessons on the organ, and that was a fantastic instrument. I play the organ, but not to your standard. And have you ever thought of playing the Blackpool grand organ? Is that ever something you've done? Because my uncle Peter got the privilege of Peter Wilde got to play the Blackpool the Blackpool Tower organ last year. So I just wondered, is that something you've ever thought of or aspired to do?
It wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was definitely something my dad wanted me to do. My dad was totally into that kind of like the whole Blackpool showbiz thing, like Tower Ballroom, all that. He loved it. Although I did play at the end of the pier when my dad worked at North Pier. So I don't know if you remember, there used to be this, I don't know if it's there anymore. It's been a while since I've been, but they used to have the Sun Lounge at the end of the pier.
Yes.
And there they would have a guy called Raymond Warbank would come and play the organ. And he had like a Wurlitzer organ. And I did get to play that one time when I was probably about 10 or 11, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you got to play at the end of the pier?
Got to play at the end. Oh yeah, I did. Also, I mean, there's one. I actually appeared on North Pier stage one time.
Wow.
With some of the celebrities, it was mad. So they used to do this a charity event every year, and it was like after all the shows had finished, you obviously had like the Grand, the Opera House, the North Pier, South Pier, Central Pier. They'd all have shows on during the season, and they'd all finish maybe about 11 o'clock or something. And then once a year, they would just do this thing at North Pier called Midnight Matinee.
Yes.
And basically the stars from all of the shows would come onto North Pier and do like a 2 or 3 hour show, like at midnight. And
just once a year? Was it just once, Darren?
Just once a year, yeah. So I remember this time it would have been October '87, and my dad got me on the bill because he worked at the theatre. So I was like, I came on and I think I played 2 pieces that I'd written myself.
Wow.
And then the other people on the bill, it was like Joe Longthorne, Dana, Roy Walker. Quite
wow, Darren, that's something I didn't know. Have you got any video footage of that you could share?
No, sadly not. No.
So you'd only be age 11, but the talent from age 6 like of learning was good enough. They felt good enough to actually appear on the billing. That's amazing, Darren.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, it's kind of quite incredible, really, that happened. So I look back on that and think, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and you what talent, what a wealth of talent there, that extends way beyond the editing and the production. You've got all these other skills as well, which is just incredible. So your dad could see from an early age what you could do, and encourage you, which is always a good thing. So you're obviously now a parent of 6, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
My goodness. And I'm sure, because you're such a funny guy, I'm sure that your artistic abilities and music and all of those fields are resonating through your children in some ways. Have they picked up on any of that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of the older ones. I mean, not that I've had anything to do with it at all, because I don't play guitar or anything, but two of my older ones are great on guitar, bass and electric. They love music. They love sort of band culture and stuff.
Wow.
And
is it a mix of boys and girls, Darren?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So 2 older girls and then 4 younger boys. And then my youngest boy at the minute is very good at starting. I can see kind of what I was like at his age, like picking out tunes on the piano and stuff. He's got that ear, which I was lucky to have at that time. Just being able to pick out tunes and get to a point. I used to be able to kind of hear a note and know what it was. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's an E, or that's an A, or
oh, so your pitching was just
pitching was great. I mean,
and can you sing, Darren? Can you sing?
No. No. No, 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 no.
But we had that training, didn't we? That started at age
Oh
16. We
yeah,
had some lessons
yeah, we
within
did.
Preston College.
Yeah.
So, and
Who
that
was that?
didn't.
Who was that? I'm trying to
Yeah, it
remember
was
who
a
that was.
lady, a lovely lady. I can't remember her
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because we used to do
and
that. E-A-R, E-A-R, E-A-R. I remember that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you
Yeah.
can sing because you can pitch,
No.
so you can get those notes, Darren.
Debatable.
But again, another string to your bow. And what about dancing? Because we had to dance quite a lot together as well, didn't we? There was a lot of dance classes. How did you fare with that?
I didn't do any dance. I didn't do it. I think I must have excused myself from any of those classes.
You were
No,
behind me. I know
no,
you were.
no. I don't. I didn't do it. And I know I didn't do it. I didn't do any dance. I took part in the music stuff, but I didn't do any. I wouldn't have dared to do any sort of dance.
So did you not do
Crikey.
the performing arts as well?
Yeah, but that was mainly sort of the acting side. So I did
There
kind
was
of like
movement though. We had to, there were classes
yeah,
to warm us up. So I'd call
yeah,
it warm up, perhaps,
yeah,
maybe not the Royal Ballet, but there was
yeah,
warm up within
yeah,
that. Because I do distinctly remember you being behind
yeah,
and giggling away, which is what we all did.
yeah.
But we had we had a good sort of hybrid of training there. So you've got your music A level, you've got theatre studies, which went quite deeply into Antonin Artaud, Bertolt Brecht, Grotowski, theatre of the absurd. People do say, oh, the arts are not for the educated. Well, actually, I totally disagree with that. I think there's a heck of a lot of education within the artistic spectrum, and I think it's incredibly important. What would you say about the necessity and love of the arts that we have? What would you say were the qualities for anybody coming up the ranks today, Darren?
I just think it's so important just to have that link to culture because without culture, what are we really? Everybody needs that aspiration and kind of the love of the work, really. I just think it's so important that everyone gets involved in it in some way, and it's just bad to see how it's maybe declined over the past couple of decades. I think it's maybe not looked upon um, as important as it used to be. I know, well, when I was at school, music was a core subject, and I feel like um, theatre studies was taken very seriously when we did it as well. And
Yeah.
I think maybe there's less of that now. I just think maybe you know people don't take it. Certainly, like governments and educationalists potentially don't take it as seriously as it used to be.
And what do you think the qualities are from, especially from your own life experience, Darren? What do you think the qualities of doing these subjects, the music, the arts, drawing, painting, anything that's a creative art expression? What do you think that gives a human being in terms of their self-development?
I guess it helps them find. I mean, it sounds terribly poncy, I guess, but it allows them to sort of discover themselves and discover kind of who they are, their personalities, and their strengths. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine not having a creative outlet. That would be a quite a tragic thing, really, because it's kind of like, well, what? I mean, what is there then?
Yeah.
If there isn't that side,
Because
what,
even people like your father doing what you would call a proper job, a
yeah,
physical manual labor job, and a
yeah,
hard job, and an
yeah,
integral job to society. His expression, his evenings were fueled by those creative subjects and the opportunity to go onto the stage in the background. And maybe in his heart, he might have, perhaps wanted to do what you were doing. Who knows, and
I think he would have loved it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, really, he wanted to be a song and dance man. My
did
dad,
he?
yeah, he would have loved that. I don't think he maybe had the skills for it, sadly, but
Who
I know
knows?
that kind of like that he would have been very happy doing that.
And I think for health, it's so important for our health, our good health. I mean, there's plenty of outlets in the environment still, but they are reducing, and we need to get those back. We need to get the community connections back together. There's teamwork skills when you're in a production company, confidence building, so that if you do want to go and get what I call the proper job, you'll have full confidence to be able to sit and have a job interview. Those are qualities that perhaps people, often can overlook. It's nice to have the IT skills, and again, they're an integral part of today's world. You've obviously got those integral skills in order to do the editing, etc. But I think it's also really important to retain our own musicality, whether that be through dance, art, expressionistic outlets, and I think that's what I would feel is important for all six of your Von Trapp family coming up the ranks. I mean, have they ever done a Von Trapp song with you?
Not yet, not yet.
So long farewell. Is that bedtime routine? Fantastic. So that's wonderful to hear what you were doing in the early stages as well, and your encouragement from your family. So moving forward, so at 18, Darren, I went to Crewe and Alsager. That was which became Manchester Metropolitan. I went there just for a year, and I then transferred and went to the University of Surrey, which was down south. And I just wanted to ask you, you apparently followed me and went to Crewe, but I'd sadly gone by then. Just explain what happened there.
Yeah, so I stayed on an extra year at Preston. So
Did you?
yeah, I did. I resat my theatre studies actually, because I hadn't done as well as I'd hoped. So I resat my theatre studies, and then yeah, I kind of followed the year after. So I think there was maybe a handful of us from Preston who went to
Yeah, there was
Crewe.
Hannah Gornall, there was Cathy James.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And what did
So
Crewe give you, Darren? What did Crewe give you, and what course did you do? The course for me wasn't right for me.
yeah,
I wanted to do as a dancer. You see, I wanted to do half dance, half drama. So the
yeah,
Roehampton Institute, University of Surrey,
yeah,
provided that outlet for me.
yeah.
And what did you study at Crewe and Alsager?
So it was like a combined arts degree. So it was actually called Live Arts, and it was quite good because you could kind of choose modules that you wanted to do. So I was mainly there to do music, a bit of drama, I think, and so writing was the big one. Actually, writing was probably the reason I wanted to go. Back in the early 90s, there weren't that actually many writing courses in the country. It's mad now when there's like every other college, every other university now has some sort of writing course. Um, I think at that time there were maybe 4 or 5 courses across the entire country that did writing, and Crewe was one of them. So that was the main reason I wanted to go to Crewe, was because I wanted to kind of go into writing at that point actually. So it was like, yeah, combined arts degree, writing, music. And then while I was there, I really got into the video making a lot more. Um, because what was quite good about it is that with it being an arts course, there was a lot of experimentation, I guess. You were allowed to kind of just try things out and not worry about failing, and kind of just try, learn different skills. And so a lot of the time that was kind of where I was going with the video stuff, was trying stuff out and making more experimental stuff really. um, so I
So
guess
the course itself gave you an opportunity to expand beyond what you were currently already doing in your home life anyway. So I mean, you must have been a godsend for the people on the course, because you already had such a build-up of skill sets, certainly in the time I knew you, 16 to 18. So you brought those into the field. You then expanded into writing. Did that then give you, again, just tell us a little bit more about what the course helped you to evolve in your professional career, Darren?
um, you know what, I'm not 100% sure that it was a major beneficial thing for me to do. Looking back on it, I think that
Okay.
what the major thing for me, and I think probably a lot of people will relate to it, is that it's the friends that you make at university that
Yes.
is the thing that stays. Everything else goes, but actually, there are still friends I have from that period of my life that I have now. So I'm kind of thankful for that more than anything.
So a
Um,
social connection. So anybody who's considering going to university, I mean, we know it's kind of very much more expensive perhaps today and much more difficult. But anybody going and thinking of going to university, social connections, friendships for life, doing what you love. So there will have been elements, I'm sure, that resonated because you were doing subjects then that you could narrow down to the margin of what you thoroughly enjoyed. But it sounds like you were sort of um, already highly skilled in those potential outlets. And tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, I kind of, I think that was a point where I sort of fell out of love with music, actually.
Oh,
That was a point where I was like, music had become very much like a job, or something I had to do. And so it was becoming less and less attractive, especially with the course at Crew. I found the music side of it quite hard, actually. The more that I got into the visual arts, the video making, the more that was attractive, and the music had
yes.
just become a little bit. I kind of grown out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
Because
what it
you've done
felt
so
like.
much of it from age
Yeah,
6.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think I just got to a point where I was like, actually, this is more like what I want to do.
So in
Um,
that respect, the good thing I'm hearing, Darren, in that respect is the course itself, the same for me when I did the same and realized this isn't for me, this particular course. Um, it actually, when you do a course like that, it kind of makes you realize what's right for you. You may well have gone into the music side, is what I mean, had you not had that experience. So I always say every negative that happens can actually open up a positive. And had you not gone through that, you might not have found what resonated with you. And I, similarity to you, did the same. And I realized actually what resonated was something slightly different. So in that respect, I guess it sort of, shone a light on what your heart wanted to do.
yeah, I think so. And maybe just having that space, and being away from home and having other friends, it gave you the opportunity to kind of, as I say, experiment and try out different things, and then kind of, yeah, I just got kind of much more into the video making at
Yeah.
that point.
And so you're doing your video making, you graduate.
So I met my wife while I was at uni.
Oh, did you? Well, that's
Yeah,
the there you go. So there's your
yeah,
positive.
yeah. I got into teaching after that, really, once I moved, and I'm in the Nottinghamshire area now. And yeah, it was one of those things where I think probably a lot of people can relate to, is that when you finish university, you're kind of dumped by the university. You feel at the end of it, you're just kind of like, off you go. There you go.
With a huge
Goodbye.
debt.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, not compared to nowadays. I mean, I think we were fortunate. I was certainly
Yes.
fortunate to have a grant at that point,
Yes.
before all that came in. But then, yeah, I moved, and yeah, got into teaching. So I started off as a music teacher, actually, weirdly enough, um, and without any teaching qualifications, just dumped into a classroom straight away. Here you go. Here's 40 kids, teach them music.
So you didn't have
Uh,
to do a PGCE, Darren?
I not at that point. I think this is late 90s, so actually, the kind of qualifications for teaching, it was kind of like, oh, you do a qualification as you're teaching. So I think it was like a sitting guilds or something like that. I just did that, and then I did the PGC, but much later on. That was probably about 7 or 8 years later. But yeah, started on the music, and then
And which
they.
school you at, Darren?
So this was a local FE college.
Yeah.
So I was doing the BTECs, kind of moved into the media side, and started. But all through that time, I was freelancing as well. So I was kind of teaching, but also doing little bits of jobs on the side. Um, so in 2003, this is probably the next big thing, is that I won a writing competition at the BBC.
Oh,
So every year they used to have the Sketch Writers Award, comedy sketch. Um, and in 2003, I won it with something that I wrote, and that kind of opened a lot of doors up for me in terms of it was useful to be able to say, to commissioning editors at channels, I've just won this competition. Can I send you, something I've written, that kind of thing. So yeah, that
wonderful. So you were really you were doing what your dad did. You had your day job, but you were also doing your creative expression for yourself, for your primary love, which was the the writing and the comedy. So was it a comedy sketch or was it a monologue? What was the piece, Darren?
oh you can find it on YouTube actually. It's just called it was a sketch called Dead Dad, funnily enough. And the basic premise was that it was a mother and daughter at home. The dad has died, but mother has recorded responses from dad on a tape recorder, so to kind of pretend that he's still there. So she kind of comes home and she's still having a conversation with her dad because mum's pressing play on the tape recorder just to pretend that he's still. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one.
Wow.
Bit of a
Yeah.
weird one. Um,
And that
yeah.
won the, just tell us again, that won the award of
It was a BBC Three New Comedy Sketch Writers Award.
brilliant.
So yeah, I mean that was amazing because I had to go down to the BBC. I mean, I've been down to the BBC loads of times since then, but that was the first time of like turning up at Wood Lane and seeing the famous BBC. I mean, I've got like pictures of myself at the time, like doing selfies, like, oh, I'm at the BBC.
With the two Ronnies, I've
Yeah,
auditioned there. So you've got like the two Ronnies and you walk through the wall of fame,
yeah,
don't you?
yeah. So that was kind of like amazing.
Yes. Well done. Well
And
done,
then
Darren.
and then yeah, that I mean that was a long time ago. But yeah, that one, and then it kind of then led to other things. I mean, I guess the most important thing that happened was that when you win a competition like that, it's the relationships that you strike up with people, like commissioning editors or producers. Um, you make friends with producers who like your work, who 5 years later down the line suddenly find themselves being commissioning editor of a channel and are interested in getting you involved in stuff. So it's funny how careers evolve. You can start having these kind of working with people on a level like producers and things, and then find that later on as you go on, they've moved up. They're kind of looking on the lookout for programs, and then they come to you.
Wow.
So which is kind of what happened. So I
So
did a
what I'm
few.
hearing you say is that you basically put your work out. Don't be despondent. Any young folk coming up the ranks, don't be despondent if you get a rejection straight away. Rather like the acting world, just keep going, keep writing, keep producing, and go on, take
And
me
keep
from there.
learning.
Keep
Keep learning.
learning.
But also, I think times have changed so much in the past, even in the past 5 years, in terms of how artists and comedians and musicians can put themselves out there through social media. I think social media has just completely changed uh, how you can work, how you can get an audience, basically.
Yes.
Um, I think very much the time when I was doing the sketch stuff, it was very much like you had to go to Channel 4, you had to go to the BBC. They were the place that broadcast it. It was like, where else do you get? There's nowhere else to go. You can go to smaller broadcasters, but your goal was like, I want a show on the BBC. I want a show on Channel 4. Now, you don't need that. You don't need that. You can perfectly set up your own channels,
Yeah.
uh, and providing that the content is good, providing that it's quality stuff, you will get an audience.
Yes. Yes. And so leading on to that, so what happened next after that? So you got picked up with that, and then your big hit was on BBC Three. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, so I had this mad idea once of like, what if you took the sound from TV shows, from records, from anywhere you could get sound from, chopped it all up, made like a kind of montagey kind of thing, and then had people lip sync to it as if it was kind of like a real thing. Um, and it was one of those things where I thought, you know what? Because at this point I'd done a few TV shows, I'd written and directed a couple of things, and what happens, quite rightly, in the industry, I hate calling it an industry, but it is an industry. What quite rightly happens is that you work with other people and things change, things develop in some way. You know, you'll have executives who have commissioners on the back who want to attract a certain type of audience, or there's something that they they want to target. That they've got sort of, before you even come in with your idea, they know what they want. And so in a way, when you go there, you're sort of being molded into what they want. Um, and I found that with a couple of programs that I did, which were good, but they weren't exactly how I wanted them, just
Yeah.
because, because of that process, that whole process. And it is a good process, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't right for those particular shows that I did. So when I came up with this idea, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to pitch this to anybody, because I think it's too difficult an idea to read on paper and know what it is. I was like, you can't describe this idea. What you need to do is actually make it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I made a pilot. I thought, right, okay, made this pilot, and then put it on Twitter, sent it around to all the contacts that I already had. And it again, it went viral, did really, really well. And then from that, it off the back of that pilot, I did two pilots actually. Off the back of that, it got commissioned for some short form series on BBC Three.
And just remind us the name of that, Darren.
It was called Big Field. So that was basically, it started off, as I say, as being this kind of like audio montage lip sync show, and then as it developed, BBC Three were much more interested in the parody side of things.
Yeah.
So in the pilot, we did a version of Take Me Out, the Paddy McGuinness show,
Yeah.
where I chopped it all up and made it sound completely mental. I played Paddy McGuinness, uh, who had who kept on throwing screwdrivers and they kept on exploding in the distance. Very, very weird. Um,
And who else
and
is on the show with you, Darren?
there's quite a few different people. I mean, as it went on, we had like Tony Way, and who's obviously gone on to Afterlife, um, and Ellie White, who was amazing. Um, But yeah, as I say, BBC Three got much more interested in the parody side, so they kind of like, take out everything else, just do the program parodies. So
Yeah.
from the second series onwards, it became basically a program parody show. So uh, each episode would just take a different program and just kind of completely make it look completely mental. Uh,
That's
so
amazing, Darren. And that's
so
your Monty Python sort of influence coming through.
yeah,
And the organ on the pier, all of those
yeah.
types of quirky, different, fantastic experiences that you've gone through. And of course, your writing skills. I mean, that's a gift, isn't it? That's a pure gift to be able to write. And could your dad write, by the way?
No, no, he wasn't really into that. My dad was just he was just a funny guy. He was just funny. He was just kind of, he would, the thing, I think probably the word that describes my dad best is daft. He was just
Daft.
daft.
A daft dad.
He
Yeah.
was daft dad. He was just like a proper northern daft dad.
And would you say you're the same as that, Darren?
I kind of. I think my dad was probably dafter than I am. I mean, my dad used to do. I mean, my dad, bless him, he lost all of his teeth by the time he was 25. Uh,
Really?
yeah, yeah. So when I was growing up, he had false teeth. And so obviously the hilarious thing of like going to the bathroom in the middle of the night and there'd be like a cup with false teeth, and you're like, oh my God, those are my dad's teeth. And yeah, and he was still quite a young guy at that point. But he used to be hilarious. I mean, he used to do stuff just to make me laugh. If it was like particularly tense at the table, we'd be having tea, and my dad would do this thing where he just used to roll his teeth
I know what you mean.
like that, and it was just hilarious. It was just hilarious. And he'd just literally do it. He knew that it was only me looking at him. He'd just do it at me.
So that his
And
wife couldn't see, so your mum couldn't
yeah.
see.
So
Was it?
yeah,
That makes it more naughty, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. I don't think my mum liked it at all when he did that. But yeah, he was
So a
just daft.
natural born comic, and again with another life, may well have been able to have the opportunity to jump into that, but he really obviously wanted with gusto for you to have those life experiences, and you're now again passing it down the line to your children as well, which is just amazing. Darren, what a fantastic story to hear. Oh, I love it when the parents are also into the field of arts as well. So you then from there you've got your BBC Three show. And what happens after that, Darren?
So with the BBC Three show, what was quite good about that, because it got commissioned and it kind of had a longevity to it. At that point, I'd never been able to take time off from work, because there wasn't enough work for me to justify leaving a job. Um, and then around that time, I got the opportunity to take voluntary redundancy at work, and
Oh,
it was kind of like, well, it looks like I'm going in this direction. Um, so I either do this now or I don't. Basically, it was like an ultimatum to myself. Was like, you either do this now, jump off this train and jump onto this other one, or you don't
yeah.
do it.
And how old would you be then, Darren?
Oh God. Quite.
In your 30s?
Not no. This is not that long ago. So this is probably I'm in my early 40s at that point. Um,
So not too long ago. So you really were. Was it how many years in teaching did you have then? 20?
Nearly, probably about 18, I think.
Yeah.
17, 18.
So you had the wealth of the teaching. What was resonating in the classes? Were you class clown still, or did
I
people sort of
mean,
warm to that?
yeah, I mean, I guess that was my thing of trying to get students on side,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And I found that also, I mean, later on, sort of in between freelance jobs, I would go back and do a bit of supply teaching. And that is like an opportunity, really. You've only got like the first 5 minutes to make an impression in a class like that. If you're a supply teacher, go
Yes.
in, and you're either going to get, they either love you or they hate you.
Yeah.
There's no sort of in between.
Like in
And
your
so,
sketch, they're going to throw those spanners.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And I just used to try and get them on side. First off, kind of like if you can just be light and a bit amusing at the start of it, get them on side, then the rest of the hour that you've got with them is going to be okay. It's when you have those moments where it doesn't, the first 5 minutes is terrible and the whole hour is the worst experience of your life, which
Oh.
they're the worst some.
And it's a bit like stand up. I mean, my background is doing stand up comedy.
Yeah,
Again, it's a hit and miss, and you can have exactly the same audience on
yeah,
another day and the
yeah,
listening and vice
yeah,
versa. So, being a
yeah,
supply teacher, there's some stand ups, aren't there, that talk
yeah,
about teaching
yeah,
experience and how it started them off. So,
yeah.
and what age were you teaching? Was it 16 to 18?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, FE age. So kind of back
Yeah.
the age we used to be at Preston, really.
Well, I was going to say, and so it's important that the teachers who are in that age group understand They are still quite difficult development ages. I still think we're children at that age. Personally, they would disagree, the students.
It's a
And
very strange, it's a very
yeah,
strange age, because I think there's so much diversity at that age as well. I think you'll have very grown-up 16-year-olds and very childish 19-year-olds. It's
yes,
kind of
yeah.
there's a lot of diversity in terms of personality and
And
at
life
that age.
experience,
Yeah,
because I was quite a naive
yeah,
Catholic, brought up to a system with a bell, and then suddenly at Preston College, all my friends went to Newman,
yeah,
and I broke free from that, and suddenly I was on a course with 19-year-olds, and you're only 16, and
yeah,
there's an enormous age difference between
yeah,
those as well.
yeah,
So yeah, so that was almost like a growing up
yeah.
experience as well for anybody. Yeah.
I mean, going back to Preston, that's probably why I went to Preston, because where I went to school in Blackpool, I could have gone on to the sixth form there,
Okay.
and I just felt like it was an extension of school, because
Yes.
there was a lot of the same teachers, it was the same pupils, there was a uniform.
That's it.
I went for an open day at Preston, and it was like another world. It was like
Yes.
it was in the middle of the summer. If you remember the summer of 1990, it was a really hot summer.
Yes.
And I remember walking, I had an interview with a music teacher. I remember walking through the corridor, and outside there was like these slopes, and there were students just like sunbathing. I was
Yes.
like, what?
Freedom. It was freedom,
What?
Darren. And the
Yeah,
amphitheatre, there was a
yeah,
beautiful, still is a
yeah,
beautiful Preston College
yeah.
amphitheatre.
Oh yeah,
And we got the opportunity, I think, a number of times. I think some of them were in your homemade movies, but you
yeah,
would film us outside, which is another talent to be able to project your voice
yeah.
outside.
Mm.
And yeah, the scenery there, absolutely superb. So, those experiences at Preston College started to mold you, and then obviously all these experiences then fast forward to your early 40s, so you've obviously got the teaching hat, which is incredible as well. And you were teaching what, keyboard at that point, would it be?
Oh no, no, I'd stopped teaching music at that point, so I only taught music for about 2 or 3 years,
And then what
and
did you
and
teach?
then I started doing the media side. In fact, actually, I was working in an arts department, so most of the time it was media, but I did cross over occasionally into performing arts, occasionally into music, occasionally into art and design. It was kind of like a whole kind of area, but yeah, mostly the media and the filming and the editing, that kind of thing.
Brilliant.
Um,
So up and
and
coming producers, up and coming editors,
yeah.
who would you say were you, what were you influencing at the time?
Um, I don't know. It's such a broad range of skills you learn at that age. I think that
Yeah,
I think it's quite. I mean, I am doing a bit of teaching now, and I think that's much more geared towards film and TV. Whereas the course that I was doing was kind of a lot bigger and covered a lot more areas. So we were doing radio and audio as well, and
wow.
all sorts of different areas.
Yeah.
Um,
Because people don't realize in entertainment there's not just the performer at the front and then your dad at the back with the
yeah,
scenery. There is actually a whole hybrid of different entertainment production team job titles that not everybody necessarily knows about.
yeah.
And we've spoken on this channel to various different artists with different production qualities, and you obviously have learnt a plethora of those skills over the years. Is that right?
Well, I think it's a weird point in history where we're at, because I think probably years ago you could have specialized in one thing and been doing that thing all your life. So you could have been a video editor, you could have been a journalist, you could have been one thing, and that was your career. I think now, just the way that social media has changed everything, I kind of think you have to have your toe in all sorts of different areas. You
Yeah.
can't be a specialist anymore. I mean, you can be a specialist, but I think you've got to have other skills as well.
So if you
So
want to be a producer like yourself, Darren, what would you say? Definitely editing is one of the major skills.
yeah, I mean, I think editing is kind of like fundamental, because I think it influences every other aspect of the creation process.
Yeah.
So for instance, if I'm writing something or if I'm filming something, I've always in the back of my mind got the editor's hat on, thinking, oh, how will this work when I'm actually in the edit and putting it together? How will these shots work together, or how will this written scene, how will this come across? So I just think as an editor, it's just useful having that in the back of your mind of like, you've always got the finished product in your head of like, what is it actually going to look like? So I think it's really important, just because it, as I say, it influences every other part of that creation process. It has for me.
And you see a lot of people coming up the ranks, they think, oh, I just want to be a director. And they think that you can just jump into that one role. But actually, what you're saying is you need to build up these skill sets. And if something resonates with you or doesn't, have the sort of wherewithal to experience these different things. And that's what is offered today, a hybrid of lots of skills, so that you can really sort of find and follow your heart and your dreams, which is something that you've done over the years. So then you're springboarded from the BBC Three. You then do a few more bits and bobs on the telly. And Have I Got News for You? Just tell us what you do with Have I Got News for You, because that's a series that everybody can resonate with. A brilliant series.
So around, I guess around, maybe it was just before the pandemic, actually. I mean, I'd been doing a lot of mashups, and I explained about the X Factor one, and I'd carried on doing that, and I'd done a lot of political mashups.
Okay.
So I'd done a couple of things. Trying to think, what else have I done? There was one video that I did. I think Theresa May had done like a promotional video for Brexit or something like that, and it just sounded so corny that I was like, this is like one of the training videos I used to watch in the late 80s. You know, when you start a new job and you watch a training video, it was like that. It was just so corny and terrible. So I re-edited it so it looked like one of those videos with the graphics and everything, and it just and added like the corporate music in the background and stuff, and just made it. So I started doing stuff like that, and then they started doing well, so I started doing more of those. I
And
did
again, you're just putting them up. So people who are wanting to do this, then you're just putting them up onto YouTube. Is that right?
onto Twitter.
Twitter.
Twitter was the main one, um, and that ended up kind of what I call now as my shop window, um, because
Like a show reel.
yeah, I used to put stuff out, and then I would get messages from people saying, "Oh, we need, this is how Have I Got News for You came about." Um, I'd done, I did one particular video, and it was, I don't know if you remember the speaker in the House of Commons called John Bercow, um, and he used to do this thing where he almost used to sing the name of the person, the Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn, um, and so using the sort of my musical ability, whatever that is, um, I had this video of Parliament, and I just compiled all the times that John Bercow had said Jeremy Corbyn, and I realised they were all at different pitches. I was like, oh, that's an A, that's a B, that's a C. Oh, you can make a tune out of this. So I made a song. I made like a Jeremy Corbyn song with John Burkoff singing, Jeremy Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn. And
That's
then
incredible.
How I Got News saw that, and then the producer of that got in touch with me and said, "Would you like to do like some promo for Have I Got News for You?" I was like, "God, yeah." I mean, I'd always loved that show, so just have the opportunity to work on it. And so they asked me like, "Oh, can you do like what you did with the John Burko thing, but do it with Have I Got News for You theme?" So I kind of made a version of the Have I Got News for You theme with John Burko going like that. And that's kind of, and then that was in 2018, 19. And I've been doing them ever since. But every 6 months, they get in touch with me and say, "Can you do our social promo?" So I've done loads for him. I've done all sorts of different things for him, re-edits of things, and we did one once where we got the Michael Gove. Did you see the Michael Gove one of him in the club in Edinburgh? He was
Yes.
dancing, and yeah, we did like a version of the Have I Got News for You theme that was like a 90s kind of rave.
Wow.
So we did a version like that, which was
So
good.
it's the credits that are rolling at the end, am I right? Or is it bits in between as well?
No, so it was on their social media.
Okay.
So it was social media promos that I was doing for them. Although some of them did make it onto TV as well.
Yeah, because
Some,
your name, Darren Dutton,
yeah,
is the credit roll.
yes. On the Michael Gove one that I just said, they liked that one so much that they actually used it as the titles for the program one week, and that's where I got my credit.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, so
That's
that was good.
incredible, Darren.
Um,
What a wonderful choice you made only a few years ago to set aside the hat of teaching, which you've obviously got such qualities there and 20 years of experience, but actually to sort of, put your career on a path and fulfill some of your dreams as well, which I think is so important when we start to become authentic, which often happens in our older lives, and we become more authentic with what we want to do, what resonates with us, then we get true happiness. And would you say that you're getting pure joy out of this work? Because you're bringing us pure joy. You really are brilliant.
I think so. I think certainly when I'm working, I think any sort of creator can relate to this. When you're working on your own terms, I think
Yes.
that's the important thing. I think I do enjoy working for others and creating things for others, but there is that slight kind of
Pressure.
pressure. There's a kind of like authority. There's a bit of a kind of gap there, and you can't quite do exactly what you want to do. You can't do something quite. You can't. You have to kind of follow the rules. So when you're working on your own terms, I find that much more appealing. So I
Yeah.
mean, as we were saying before about lockdown, that kind of happened because like everybody, I didn't have a job to go to. So it's like, what do you do with your time? So I
So
ended up
what happened?
like,
Did you get furloughed, or what was your
well,
situation, Darren? Because a lot of
that
people
the
struggled.
yeah, did struggle for quite a time because I the last job that I had actually before pandemic was as a supply teacher, but um there was complications with that because it was like, can you still get furlough off that because you kind of you're
Yeah.
not teaching anymore and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, I did get furlough. It took a while to come through, so it was a bit of a kind of hard time for the first maybe 6 weeks.
Oh,
But again, it was like, what do you do with your time? So it was one of those things where uh, the kind of Downing Street uh, presentations
with
had become like,
Boris.
yeah, they'd just become the focus of everybody's day. Everybody would be like, oh, we'll watch the thing, you'll watch the latest COVID news at 5 o'clock. And then I ended up just kind of like taking the piss out of those basically, and just kind of getting those and just re-editing them. So I had a few that kind of went massively viral, just like, so I mean, the first one I did, which I don't even think is that good. It's weird, really. What is interesting when you work in social media is what you think will do well and what actually does well.
Okay.
Um, and this was just a simple idea because it was just like Boris, his catchphrase in the meeting was "Next slide, please."
That was my
Um,
favorite. That was
yeah,
mine.
yeah, next slide, please. So I just thought, oh yeah, so I can edit in like pictures of slides, and that's all he's doing. He's just like looking at slides and going, "Next slide, please," and then it's showing another picture of a slide. Next slide, please. Uh,
Children's slide, just to explain
yeah,
that, it's
yes,
children's slides, not an
children's
actual
slides.
slide.
Yes, yes,
And they
sorry,
were
yeah.
different colours. There was a big
Yeah,
red slide and a little blue slide.
yeah, yeah. It's just a very. It was. I mean, it was in on the face of it. Actually, I think it's a really obvious idea to do because it's next slide, slide. You can kind of make that connection. Um, so I did that, and that kind of went. It just went beyond. It got to the point actually where my son said, "I've been sent your video by someone that you don't know." So it had kind of gone full circle. It
Yeah.
like come back to my son, and it was my video. It's a very odd thing of like, this has been shared so much that it's kind of
Yes.
um. So I kind of sort of had it feels weird saying it, but I had a sort of good pandemic because
Yes, I understand.
I really built up my social media following. I
Yeah.
started off with something like I think I had something like 5 or 6 thousand followers on Twitter at that point. Then at that point, it just like went up and it went beyond 30,000 followers,
Wow.
just from these videos.
That's incredible. And all credit to you. I love the people on my channel because we're all very self-deprecating, but actually you have an incredible set of gifts, not just one, so many with the writing and the production abilities. You can do the whole thing yourself and even performing in it as well, which is an additional skill. So how amazing.
I kind of think of myself as he's just one of those people who's like, I can do lots of things quite well, but nothing brilliantly.
Oh, I
So
disagree. You are
I,
brilliant. I
I don't know.
disagree.
I feel like I've got, I get by in a lot of things. I get away with stuff. There's some things that I wish I was better at that I can't quite do, but I get away with it just about. So
Well,
like stuff like
that
graphics and
sums you
stuff.
up. That sums you up because actually, tell us a little bit about the fact that you're now, well, you got talent spotted, didn't you? And what was the particular video that got you onto the Piers Morgan Good Morning show in the lockdown time?
I think that was there was a couple actually that made it onto Good Morning Britain, I think. The
Go on,
one that
describe them, Darren, because that's what makes me laugh.
the one that I think it did was the one you're talking about was the one where Matt Hancock did it, but the way he was speaking was very weird, and he was like talking like a game show host. He was like Bob Monkhouse. It's very weird. And I saw a lot of comments online, like people saying, "Does Matt Hancock think he's on a quiz show?" And that just gave me an idea. I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do something with that. So I got like an old 80s episode of The Price is Right, and I just kind of cut it together with him, and even with the audience going woo and things like that, you know,
It was
and
brilliant.
yeah. But I mean, what it boils down to is that there's that little bit of truth in it. That's what it is. I mean, it's a funny video, but actually, the core of it is that actually he was a bit like a quiz show host, and if you just kind of put those things together, then it kind of works.
So
Yeah.
what I saw was Boris in the centre with the lectern, and then the two gentlemen each side. And then as he was leaving, they would all sort of bow and shuffle out
Yeah.
backwards. And
Yeah.
what you did repeatedly was a succession of different game shows as they bowed and the music would come up. It was just phenomenal. And we needed that. The thing that I need to give you back and say thank you to you, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody that was watching, is that you lifted the spirits. The spirits were very down, and in some cases they still remain so. And that's the joy, the pure joy of entertainment, and why it's so important, and the core of what this channel's all about as well. That in the darkest times, whether it be poor health, sad losses, all the things we've all gone through, particularly in the last 5 years, what you brought was pure joy and a channel and an opportunity to escape the escapism and the laughter in the face of adversity. So you really were the Gracie Fields of
But
of the media.
things we go. I think one important thing to say about that as well is that I was completely doing it for myself.
Okay.
I although I was putting it out there for other people to enjoy, it was definitely something for me to do whilst I was doing nothing. It's
Yeah.
kind of like I've got to get my head around something. I've got to do something creative.
Yes.
So it boiled down from like what makes me laugh, what would and that was it. I was trying to entertain myself, and then yeah, I did get lots of nice comments at the time saying how generally it helped people, and that was really good.
Well, that's it, and that's the essence of you, Darren, because you have a very good heart as well. You really do, and that's nice for the audience to see you in the physicality, because we're always seeing your edits and productions. So, what happened from there then?
It was on Good Morning Britain, I think. I think they showed a couple, as far as I remember. They showed that one. I think they might have shown
They did.
a couple of others as well. I
And
know
what did they say, Darren? What did Piers Morgan say?
they were just saying like how true to life it was. How
Yeah.
I'd obviously hit a nerve with people because people could see what I had pointed out. They could see this kind of whole showmanship stuff.
Yes.
Um, and there was another one where I there was a Sky News interview that Matt Hancock did where he was talking about social distancing, I think, and I think again I wanted to get the fact that he didn't seem like a completely serious person. There was something about him that was just um, I don't know. There was a bit of bravado around it, and just a little
Yeah.
bit of showmanship, and kind of not being quite real.
Yeah. Not being authentic. Yeah.
Not being authentic, exactly. Um, and so he did the Sky News interview, and I thought, you know, what would be really funny actually if he's sat there and he's just playing the banjo while she's talking to him, ding a ding 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 a ding 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 a ding ding ding. So I got this video of someone playing banjo, put it completely out, just kind of like with all the video effects and stuff, superimposed it onto Matt Hancock. So he's just doing this sort of interview about the pandemic, and he's just playing this band. And again, it's one of those things that took off because again, people could see the truth in it. There's that element, or it was completely ridiculous. There was an element of truth about it, and what I
He
love about
wasn't
those
behaving like a health minister. He was
exactly,
behaving like an actor, and that's
yeah,
what the audience needed to
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in it to be he was almost like a David Brent figure. He was like
Yes.
trying to be sort of like cool and
Yeah.
entertaining rather than just kind of focus on the job.
Yes.
Um, and
Yeah.
I think that kind of pointed that out. So yeah, there were a
But you
whole
did it
load
through
of
comedy. You did it through comedy, Darren, which
well,
is just magic.
I think that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
If you're going to persuade anyone of any kind of point, through comedy by making them laugh. You make people think.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
you know, satire is just a brilliant way of communicating with people
Yeah.
and changing people's minds because you're not telling them how to think. You're just pointing out how ridiculous things are, and
Yes.
you're like, actually, yeah, you know what? It is ridiculous.
Absolutely. So from there, am I right that you then went on to television, more television work? Had you already worked at the BBC prior to that, or was that an offshoot from the from the viral videos? So if anybody in the youth wants encouragement, get your videos out,
Yeah,
have a go, because you just
yeah,
don't know where it's going
no,
to land and who's going to pick it up in
no,
today's
exactly.
world.
Yeah. No, I mean, after that, really, so we're still in the pandemic. And again, it's one of those things where I'm looking for work. And
Yeah.
then an old friend of mine who I'd worked with probably about 10 years previously on other BBC things said, oh, I'm doing this show for Channel 4, this daytime show called Steph's Packed Lunch. We
Steph's packed
need,
lunch.
yeah,
Yeah.
we need a social producer. Have you thought about applying to Channel 4? Um,
Wow.
so that's what I did. So I went through all the interview process and everything, and got the job. And I was just kind of like social media. It was just a weird transition, kind of like I've been teaching for so long and doing bits of social stuff, but now this was like my proper job. And
Wow. And what
so
did you
yeah,
do on that, Darren? Just explain to the audience what your job role was, because we know what the presenters do if we're
yeah.
performers, but we're not quite sure what social media role is. If you can explain that to the audience.
So social media producer is basically looking after all the different social channels. So on Steph's, it was like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
Um, and it was kind of, I guess, making a lot of noise about the show was probably the biggest thing, that it was going to be on and who was going to be on it, that kind of thing. So a lot of promo stuff, but also clips from the show. So I could just like lift clips from the show and put it online. So anything that I thought would travel well on social. So you know what works on social, uh, animals,
Yeah.
cats, dogs, but also kind of emotive stories, things that make you laugh. You know, those kind of like quick hits, really. So I'd watch the show thinking, oh, what are the little moments here that would work as social clips? So did that. Then there was also kind of filming extra stuff behind the scenes. So doing lots of extra stuff with either with Steph or with I had a lot of fun with Steph just doing some silly things. We did a Line of Duty parody once where we cut so we had Ted Hastings on the phone, and because there was a character called Steph that he was talking to on the show, Steph messaged me and said, "Oh, we should do something with this because he's talking to Steph on the phone. And he could be talking to me." So yeah, we just came up with a sketch idea of doing like a Line of Duty thing where she's going to invite him on the show and stuff.
That's brilliant. So you brought that production quality, so it wasn't just suddenly you're being dictated to do some serious promo. You could actually have a little bit of your own influence and make some of it quite quirky. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably why they wanted me as well. I think they'd
Yeah.
seen the stuff that I'd done before and thought, oh, you know, you could really bring something to this. So so
You've got a beautiful mind, basically, haven't you? It works
I
in a
don't know.
very creative way. So
Yeah, it's very worrying how it works. I don't quite.
does it ever switch off? Does it ever switch off?
It does, and you know that's actually kind of a serious point I'd make is that there are there are periods where everything flows and everything's great and you're coming up with ideas, but conversely also there are periods where it flatlines. And there are periods where you kind of get a little bit scared just because, like, where are the ideas, please? This was all working
Yes.
really well. Why is it not
Wow.
happening now? And there are those kind of slightly darker moments where you think, oh God, what's going on? Not to put anyone off at all,
No, I think that's really important, Darren, because this channel is about entertainment and health. And the idea of it is to community link everybody so that we're all, looking at professionals like yourself who've gone through the ranks in different modalities and become a huge success in your field and continue to be so, but also the pitfalls, people that have had auditions or like you interviews, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then you're back to square one again because this industry, it's driving a car and then there's traffic lights and then there's a gap and it might be 2 or 3 years and then another opportunity comes, and it's just accepting the highs and the lows. And how would your mental state be? Would you find that there are times when you're not producing and creating where it feels a little bit somber?
yeah.
How do you sort of override that in terms of helping others today?
Yeah, it's really hard actually. There have been periods where it's been quite fallow, and and it's kind of it becomes a bit of a cycle. It kind of is a bit of a vicious cycle in terms of like you're not producing work, so is your work not very good? Then you start thinking, well, is anything that I've done actually been any good? And then
Oh,
you sort of start going down that kind of rabbit hole of kind of, and you lose a lot of confidence. I think that's what it is. You lose a lot of confidence, and I think that's the worst thing is that when you lose confidence, you don't have the ability to kind of want to kind of put yourself out there but inevitably that's the cure, unfortunately,
yeah.
is pushing forward and trying and keeping on doing it. So, um, I mean, for instance, I'd not done any sort of funny social things for a while. Um, I was obviously very productive during the pandemic because I wasn't working, and then once I found myself working, you have a lot less time to do that kind of stuff, and you see you kind of get a bit of social envy because you look at other people and they're doing all this fantastic stuff, and it's like I could do this if I had the time.
Oh,
And and then you get to a point where actually, oh, you know, maybe maybe I don't have this gift anymore, or I can't do it anymore. But then the other week, I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna force myself to do it. I'm gonna force myself. So
I
I
think I
knew there
know
was.
what you're talking about. It was hilarious.
Well, last week I knew, and I've done some of these leadership debates before. I did one when when Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak were against each other in that debate. I did like an edit of that and just made everybody sound ridiculous in that. And I just thought that's a really good format to edit around because you can kind of really bring out some truth. Um, Again, it is sort of like pointing out that little grain of truth that's there, even though it's completely ridiculous, it's
Yeah.
true.
And what we need to do is bring that laughter to our community and get those spirits back up again and
Yeah,
not take life so seriously. I think I hear
yeah,
you're saying. So
yeah.
what did you do last week with a bottle of water?
Oh, there was that one. There was a different one as well. So the bottle of water. I mean, that was quite Rishi Sunak getting soaked by the rain was just a gift to everybody everywhere, wasn't it? It was just like that's just a gift to everyone. Thank you for that, Rishi. We love you for that. So I just did one where I just kind of superimposed somebody pouring a bottle of water over his head. But the other one that I was mainly talking about was I did one last week where did you see the ITV debate between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer?
Yes.
And what was quite ridiculous about it was that they only had 45 seconds each to talk, and then they talk over each other. And actually, you'd watch this 90-minute program and realize you've not actually heard anything of any depth at all from either of these people, because the format of the show is so that they don't get the opportunity to talk about anything worthwhile. They've got sound bites. That's all they've got. That's all they've got. So I just thought there's an edit in this. So I just did it completely ridiculously, where the host of the show was just interrupting them after like a second of them talking. Um, and again, I mean that did really well. That got picked up by Politics Joe, which was quite cool.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
one of the big politics Twitter accounts, which is good. But again, I think it is kind of that element of truth about it is ridiculous. Then being interrupted after 1 second of just going and then going, sorry, we're gonna have to stop there. But actually, a lot of people said that's what it was like. That's
Yeah.
actually, you've kind of taken the mick out of it, but actually, that is actually what it was like. Because they can't say what they want, they say hardly anything of interest at all. So you've just got this whole program where they're just talking in little sound bites. You're getting little tiny bits, but actually not really getting really a rounded version of that person and who they are and what their policies are. You're just getting this kind of like ba, 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 and it's just I
Like
just found
like an orchestra, like you say,
yeah,
just sound coming.
I just thought it was ridiculous. I mean, to be fair, there have been some better ones on since, but that particular one, that format was just ridiculous. So, like, yeah, going back to kind of like, I knew there would be something funny in that, so I just kind of forced myself to do it. I just sort of stayed up, and I was up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, just putting that video together. Because as most people will know as well, it's social media is it's definitely about the quality of the content, but it's also about the timing of it as well. You've got to be there. There's no point in putting that video out 2 days later, because it just won't have the same effect.
Yeah.
So I knew that kind of I'd have to stay up, finish it, and then put it out first thing the next morning. So like 7 o'clock the next day, straight out. So it was like an
Goodness, so
instant
the
reaction.
timing of it is imperative, is what you're saying. So that's
So
interesting
important.
for others coming up the ranks. So
Well, certainly, I mean, I would say certainly in terms of political satire, any form
yes,
of satire, it just has to be, pretty instant for the joke to work, because you basically 2 days later, everyone's slept since then. It's kind of slightly old news. I mean, the whole Rishi Sunak Sky TV thing is still funny, but it was much funnier, when it happened as opposed to
yes,
now, because we're,
yes.
we're days from it and it's kind of settled down. We're on to something else now. There's something else
And I
every single
think
day.
I think that's important to say as well, that in today's world, comparative to our youth, um, everything moves at such a fast speed. And what was interesting, yesterday is something else has completely changed the following day. So it's, if you want to become a producer and an editor and work in the channels that you're doing, you really have to be on point, and you have to give of yourself, give your time, sometimes to the early hours of the morning, I'm hearing you say,
Mm.
and that's a stressor on the system as well.
It's really
Um,
hard. I think it's really hard, actually. I think being a sole social media manager where you do everything is actually really hard. I don't think people realize actually how tough it is, because there is a lot of pressure. There's just kind of like, because I think with social media as well, it's about, as I've said, it's about the quality of it, it's about the timing, and it's also about volume. It's also about putting as much, a lot of content out, because if you don't do that, again, you don't really have an audience because you're not putting stuff out there for people to consume.
So to balance your world, Darren, before we draw to a close, I think what I want to ask you is, in balancing your world, would you say to make sure that you still keep those creative juices flowing? Because you really smile when you talk about, I stayed up till 3 a.m. You're so passionate, as I am, and that's great. So what really sort of gives you that adrenaline and that excitement and drive is when you put something out there like a comedian, which is instant with the stage format, but for you, you get it on the social media. It's the likes, it's the hits, it's the laugh signs. That's
Yeah.
your sort of strength, if you like, and that's what gets you and resonates with you. And go on.
Well, I was just going to say, it's probably the coward's way of doing stand up in a way, because you don't actually have to face an audience. You don't have to, have that kind of risk of failure. You do a video. If it does well, brilliant. Everyone's if it doesn't do well, it's not the end of the world, because what have you lost? You've not really lost anything. It's just not done very well. So
But it's still a pressure. What
yeah,
I understand what you're saying, and again, very self-deprecating, but it is still a pressure. But most importantly, there's a lot of time and energy gone into that. So even just pouring a bottle of water over Rishi's head was just, you've got to do the editing process. You've got to think about your music. You've got to think about it as being a piece of theatre or a piece of film montage with a beginning, a middle, and the end, in order to get the hit that we all crave as entertainers. We want that hit, we want that please love me. Have you ever had that feeling inside of you, like, somebody please love me? Because I know I have as an artist, and eventually as you get older you sort of think, well, do you know what, I'm actually more relaxed in this now. I'm not looking for that hit. I'm actually going to enjoy the process. Did you ever have that in yourself, a lack of confidence underneath?
I think so. I think probably because in younger days, in teens and stuff, because I was quite sort of socially awkward, I think a little. I used to find the video making was a way to communicate with people in a way that I couldn't naturally. Kind of like, if I don't know, I just used to kind of make stuff and then show it to people and go, look how funny I am on this
Oh,
video. Look how funny I am on this video. Not in real life, but in this video. Um, so I think, I mean, as you say, I think as you get older, you get much more of a grip on yourself and who you are and things. Um,
but underneath you were quite shy, because there will be a lot of upcoming producers that are feeling the same. They're locked away in their rooms,
yeah,
they want to do the editing, and they want to know that they're also, their feelings are taken into consideration, which is what this channel's about.
yeah,
So I feel for you, you were a little shy, is what I hear you saying,
yeah.
underneath, and that was your mask, if you like. But at the same time, what did I say I thought you should have been?
Yeah, I remember it well. I remember, I don't know where we were, at somebody's house or something. You introduced him to a friend, and you actually introduced me as a comedian. You didn't say, this is Darren, he's funny, or, you said, he's a comedian. And I was like, part of me was like, oh my God, she's just told me, she's just said I'm a comedian. So I now have the pressure, I have to be funny. But at the same time, it was like, that's a really great thing to say. So
Oh.
yeah, I do remember that fondly.
But so again, I was being very authentic, because you are, and we don't often see what others see in ourselves either. That's so important, and I discussed that in my book a little bit as well. We don't often see the qualities in ourselves that others see in us, and that was huge, and I wasn't the only one who felt like that. So you felt socially awkward. We saw you as pivotal to the comedy and the grace of the course that we were doing. You were so great in so many ways, and that really, as well as steered you in this profession, because if you didn't have those qualities and you were hard to work with and you weren't naturally funny and caring and kind, then the industry also would
Oh,
not be grabbing you.
I'm definitely hard to work with.
I
I'm de-
disagree.
no, there have been times where I will dig my heels in, but you know, I think
But
you've got to be.
as a personable person, though, what I mean
Yeah,
is when we go for these castings and interviews,
yeah,
your personality, and it shone through Steph's, because I think you were actually there in person on Steph's channel at one point on the
yeah,
television.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can see your character resonating through the screen. So, and Steph's a lovely lady. You can see again that she comes across as very personable as well, and that's what the audience are endeared to, that brilliant character that you've got. So so you may be tough on yourself. It sounds like you're quite tough on yourself. And do you have your own little sort of studio set up at home?
Kind of. I think it's kind of difficult with having so many kids. Of like, where actually can you hide? There's not really, but I kind of have a bit of a setup, but it is definitely portable. It's kind of like I will work in one place and then I will move according to what's going on at the time.
That's
Um,
fantastic. And what's the future for you, Darren? What does the future hold? And what would you give your audience if it was the young you watching you today as an inspirational producer, director today? What would you give your audience today?
well, first of all, just in terms of what's next, I don't know. I kind of I kind of wanted a while ago to get out of social media because I didn't think it was doing my mental health very good. But then again, it's kind of like, well, what else do I do then if I don't do that? So I don't know. I'm looking. I guess I'm looking for more opportunities in social media to do the kind of thing that I want to do. So more comedy stuff, I think. In terms of advice for up and coming, I think just take every opportunity where you can. Just don't let yourself persuade you out of doing things. There are times that that little voice in your head says, "I'm not good enough to do this," or "I can't do this." Um, and I think the times where I've had the most success is when I've just jumped in both feet and just gone sod it and just done it. Um,
Yeah.
there have been times where I thought, I'm not qualified to do this, but then, you know, acting is a great thing. You can get away with a lot for the first few weeks of a job where you can pretend you know what's going on. And then you kind of like get into the swing of it and then So yeah, that's what I'd say is just like don't try not to be sort of down on yourself and give yourself those opportunities if they come along.
Fantastic. And will we be seeing more party political broadcasts from you in the form of comedy? I do hope so.
I hope so. I mean, again, what is interesting is that it all depends on what happens. I can't control what Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer do. So,
I don't think anybody can.
no, but I kind of have to watch stuff, and something has to occur to me like, oh, isn't this like there'll be a little idea that's knocking around if I'm watching something like. Um, but I mean, having said that, I've watched the last three debates, and there's been nothing. I've been watched it and gone, there's nothing here.
So it's got to spark a little bit of comedy. Yeah.
So there has to be something that kicks it off. So like with the one I did last week, it was just the format of the show, which I thought was funny. There's another one of these debates I think quite soon, so I'll watch that. And again, who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully there'll be something I can latch onto that I can pick up. I wouldn't want to just repeat what I've done before. I wouldn't want to just do the same gag again. It'd have
Of
to be something
course.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, I did watch the one last night, and I did have an idea, but I just thought it's going to take a long time to do, and I just don't know if I've got the patience. But I think what I'd like to do, because there was 7 people in the debate last night, and I just
Well, that
thought,
could be your whole family doing it then.
well, that's it. Well, it could be, couldn't it? But there was No, it just kind of occurred to me like they're all speaking they all had their little moment to speak, and I just thought, I wonder if you compiled all their bits together, so they're saying lots of different things, and then you can chop it up and make them sound ridiculous. Maybe there is something in that where they're asking a question, and then the politicians just sound completely mad because you've got all these words out of context. Again, these are kind of thoughts that kind of occur to me when I'm watching stuff. Just like, yeah,
So you have to watch a lot of social media things as well to get those ideas. Yeah.
well, it's not necessarily watching social media. It's a lot of watching programs in general.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the one that I did the other day that was talking about with Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak being interrupted all the time. I watched that, and this is how anal the whole process is. So, I have I have it on a TV. On another screen next to me, I have full screen. I have the time, complete with hours, minutes, seconds. I have a notebook and I'm writing down like, oh, Richie said this. When? Oh, 9:14:57. Right, next. And I've got this book for the other night. There's probably about 4 pages of notes
With
uh,
timelines on.
with times on, just saying what's happened and what he said, so that when I go back into it, I can find those moments easily. And that's come from experience, because I know that if I hadn't have done that, if I knew it was there, I'd have to watch the whole program again and find it, and it's just like a nightmare.
Well, that's
Whereas if you
great
just,
advice, Darren. That's great
yeah,
advice. Make your
yeah,
timelines, frame it, write it, have your little journal at the side. Great
journal, just
advice.
right, just the time. I mean, if you're watching anything live, it is all about the timings, and sometime, and also making as many notes as possible, because when you're watching something, the idea might not occur to you right there and then. It might be after the program's finished, and you
Yeah.
think, oh, actually, they kept on doing this thing. Where was that? And then you can go back to your notes and find them, and you find
Great
that, oh,
idea. So, like a comedian would have a journal and write jokes down, you're
yeah,
saying keep your journal with you because you could be at a friend's house or you could be at the cinema and you could have watched something. So,
yeah,
keep something like a journal by your side where you can actually write your timelines, write your gags effectively,
yeah.
potential gags to go onto a media outlet.
Certainly in the way I work in terms of watching those kind of live programs, and I've worked like that in the past before, not necessarily on comedy programs. I've worked on Strictly Come Dancing. I used to do some social media for a few years ago, and again, it was a case of note taking and timings,
Yes.
because that is so important. So that whole
Wow.
process, and having to be quite serious about that side. Really, you have to be organised.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as much as you'd like to have a bit of a scatterbrained comedy approach, you can't really have that. You've
So,
got to
there's
be
quite a
kind of,
methodical,
you've got to be,
yeah,
if you want to be successful, if you want to be able to produce material very quickly, which
yeah.
is what social media is all about, then it's trying to get a head start all the time.
And also
And
listening to other people who are saying, I like the way you've edited that, but actually this would enhance it. That's something as well. It's not just vying for your own products
yeah,
in the media, but also making sure you listen to the professionals around you with life experience so that you can adjust and adapt. And sometimes, like in acting, they can say, well, do it that way, but also do it in a different way. Or here's a whole new page of script to learn the night before you're back on stage. And the same with production. They might like a concept, but the colours might be wrong or the format's wrong. So it's listening to each other, listening to the pros, and adapting your work in conjunction with that for the very best production quality. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I think so. Certainly, if you're working with other people, then I think I've been lucky and unlucky at times with people that I've worked with, because there are some people who are really insightful, who you just connect with, and every note that they give you is a good note.
Yeah.
Every note you're just like, oh God, yeah, that's so good. Why didn't I think of that? Conversely, I've worked with other people where there's notes I've been given and I've just gone, what? Well, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to do that? What? So I think finding the right people to work with is key.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, if you find somebody that you do have a good relationship with and you have that kind of, you're getting feedback off of them and it's
And it
chiming,
resonates.
it's resonating, it's chiming with you, then definitely stay with that person.
Fantastic. And unfortunately, we are going to have to draw this to a close, Darren. Time is slightly against us. There's so much more that I would like to talk to you about. And maybe we can bring you back in the future, depending on what lies ahead for you. And I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to you for today. You've given us a wonderful insight into your magical, beautiful mind and the world of creation in all these different hybrid of disciplines, and in particular production and directing. So long may your career go ahead in the future. There's so much more ahead for you, I'm sure. And may you get your comedy series that you want. That's your next chapter. And I hope that life ahead brings you increased joy, as you have also brought to us. So honestly, Darren Dutton, thank you so much for today, and thank you for all of your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Cathy.
Okay, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks, Darren. Bye, love. Bye.
Bye-bye.